You're listening to Perfectly Normal. This is a podcast where I bring you love, courage, and connection. I'm your host, Michelle. I'm a confident and leadership coach who works with negative self-talkers to help them to discover inner strength and beauty by overcoming fear for judgment. I'm the founder of Elevate Life Coaching. It's a seminar and coaching company. Let's jump right into the show. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Perfectly Normal. So this week, I want to talk about normal. I know, right? This is like going back to my original post or original podcast talking about perfectly normal. What is normal for you? So as many of you know that I had titled my book Perfectly Normal because all my life I wanted to be normal. And yesterday I was on a podcast shows and we were talking about, our current situation, the COVID-19. And my host asked me whether or not I believe that, we are ever going back to normal. And my answer to him was no. I don't believe that we're going back to normal, and I don't believe there's such thing as normal. And I really think that normal is a lie because there is no such thing as normal, like I said. If you think about it, normal is really depending upon how we defined it. And, what's normal for you is not the same normal for me. So the conflict among people and between all of us is when it comes in as I am defining you under my definition of normal. So I want you to be normal, but only under the circumstances that you fit into my definition. So if you don't, that means that it makes you abnormal or weird or different. In a nicer way, people would say you're very unique, you're eccentric, right? And it all depends on what is our own definition of normal. So when my host asked me this question, like, so do you think we're ever going back to normal? And my answer was no, I don't think we're ever going back to normal. If you think about, what normal is, it's a package, it's a parameter, it's something that defines what our standard is based on our own personal belief, also based on personal experience. That defines you for that normalcy, right? So if we were to think about how our life is changing and how everything is changing constantly in this world, what's normal in this minute will not become normal in the next minute. And we keep changing, we keep evolving, and that's what human do, that's what human does. We keep evolving, so every moment. And the phrase that I share with him is that you don't ever step into the river twice, you don't ever step into the same river twice. So going through this whole COVID-19 experience, it's changing, it's shifting our whole entire world's perspective, is changing our own perspective in terms of, what is a way of living. And there's just so many things that's changing just from a couple of months ago. Like it's almost been 2 months, right? So it's not the same anymore. So moving forward, we're not going back to normal. There's no such thing as normal. And if people who would tell you that, oh yeah, things will just go back to normal, and hopefully, once they alleviated, they lifted the restriction, things will just go back in place. Mm, I really believe that there's a lot of people who are very naive, and I don't know if it's simply denial or maybe they just haven't really come to the truth. But I don't think we're going back. And I don't mean that, we're not going back in a negative way. I mean that, we're not going back, period. And whether it's the good or the bad, I don't know. And I think I shared this in last episode. We're standing here, right here in the present moment. We don't know what the future is, so we can't predict how it's going to be. If we were to going to project in, oh yeah, tomorrow is going to be so bad, we're not going to go back to the way that we used to live, then that's where that negative self-talk will start kicking in and projecting into something that may or may not be real. So we're not going to do that here. That's not me. And I hope, those of you who's listening to me and who's been following me, who's been downloading this episode for quite some time, you also know that that is not where we want to go. Where we want to go is we want to stay in the present moment and understanding what we have and what can we do, what are the opportunity that we can improve upon. Yes, we're not going back to normal, but what opportunity have we get from out of this? So perhaps looking into a more positive way, it would be the thinking of, well, we are not going back to normal, and what are the opportunity that we have learned so far, and how can we use and apply these opportunity in improving our social life, improving the way that we speak to people, improving the connections that we made through this past 2 months or 1.5 months of time. How can we use what we have, improving upon in the future, and that will create a different life for us. And when you look at life in a more positive way and in a more opportunistic way, then it starts to change how you view and see things. You don't see it as a loss. Just because we're not going back to live the same way that we used to be doesn't mean that we can live our life in a new, more improved way, right? I mean, if you just keep choosing to focus on the negative, you will only see the negative. And it all comes down to, how do you choose? How do you choose to only see the negative, or are you open? And I'm not even saying you have to. Are you open to choose, or to learn to choose to see things in a different perspective? You don't have to see it positive either. And I always encourage people, it's not too extreme, right? You don't have to choose being positive, and you don't have to choose being just negative. You can choose just to be neutral. I'm just going to have a neutral feeling about all this, and I'm going to see what's coming, see what is possible. And that's a beautiful phrase. I now, like this past 2 days, I love to use. I like to see what is possible. I won't say no, I won't say yes, but I like to see what is possible. And I think that opens up, our energy. It opens up our the way that we think, the way that we feel. And I was just sharing this with a client of mine earlier today. I said, when we force ourselves to think that we should be doing something in a certain way, then that's actually very tiring. It creates a lot of draining energy on you, because you think that you should be doing in certain way, like everybody else does, so therefore it makes sense that I should be doing it in this way. But when you think about it, the fact that we're not motivated, we're not inspired to do it, is because that thing is just not important to us. Jumping off of a plane and doing skydiving is just not something that I wanted to do. Yes, everybody they wanted to do it, and maybe I should be doing it, but I don't need to do it. I don't want to do it. So how we speak to ourselves will matter, and how we feel, and it will determine the outcome that we choose. So how are you speaking to yourself today? Are you speaking to yourself in a more empowering way and thinking it as, yes, we're not going back to normal, but that doesn't stop me from, testing out things and trying new adventures, and maybe just going to the grocery shop. Nowadays, it's quite an adventure. So I can choose to see it as in a more neutral feeling and neutral perspective, then that will give me a different feelings, and therefore giving me a different behavior. And whether or not it's leading to more, better future or worse future, we don't know. All we know is that we can live in the present moment, and present moment is all we have. So I hope this will help for those of you who are, maybe stuck in the moment where you're thinking about the things that you have lost in the past and that you will never be able to get it back because you don't feel that, this is going to be normal. Then this episode is really for you. I wanted to invite you to go back and really look at how we define our normal. What is normal? Is there a normal? How do you define your normal? And for me, it was perfectly normal to be abnormal. And, personally, lately, my new word, perhaps you have heard me a couple of episodes ago, my new word is extraordinary. Why would you want to be normal when you can be extraordinary? So, my listener, that is my question to you. Why would you want to be normal if you can be extraordinary? Right? So, don't be enough, be extraordinary. And have a fabulous week. And I will see you next week. Oh, by the way, if you like to interact with me, if you like to send me messages and, just kind of ask me questions throughout the week, I would encourage you to check me out on my Facebook group. So if you go to my Facebook group, it's called The Confidence Lab. If you type in The Confidence Lab, you'll be able to find me on Facebook group, and you can come and leave me messages, comments, share what's going on in your life, do posts, do video. I always encourage people to do video because a lot of time when we speak, it actually cultivates our confidence. So I would encourage you to check me out, interact with me in the group. And if you haven't already done so, go visit me on my website at elevatelifecoaching.org. I will see everyone next week. Hey, thanks for joining me this week on another episode of Perfectly Normal. Make sure to visit my website at elevatelifecoaching.org. And if you found value in this show, I would appreciate a rating on iTunes and Spotify. Or you can simply tell a friend about this show. That would really help me too. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. If you'd like to become a Patreon to the show, you can visit patreon.com/Michelle Quay. Thank you for your support, and be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.